Alright guys, today we're going to look at multiplying different expressions together. In a previous video I talked about and introduced the idea of like terms, and I stressed one of the key concepts with like terms is that you can only add or subtract expressions that are like terms. With multiplying and dividing, that totally changes. You can multiply or divide expressions whether they're like or unlike terms or expressions. So I've got a few examples here. The idea is basically the same regardless of the type of expression, and the way that I like to explain this is when you're multiplying these expressions, there's kind of two different parts you're going to look at. Part of it is going to be the number values that are being multiplied by your variables. So like looking at number 1 here, I'm looking at 2 and 3. I'm going to go ahead and just multiply those together before I do anything else. So I know that 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, and so that's the first part of my answer. And then I'm going to look at the variables kind of as a separate entity, even though they're also being multiplied together, and it's all going to end up being one expression. And so I'm going to multiply x squared times x cubed. And the way you multiply variables that are the same is by adding their exponents. And so if you say x squared times x cubed, your answer ends up being x to the 5th, because you added the 2 and the 3, which were your exponents, okay? And so your final answer to this one is going to be 6x to the 5th when you multiply that out. And that's how that works. And so kind of looking down at the next one, you kind of take the same process here. You've got your numbers 4 and negative 2. Multiply those together and get negative 8. Okay, and that's always a good place to start. This time I have different variables. I have x and y. And although you can multiply x and y together, you cannot, there's no real change in what they are. And so the standard rule is to put them in alphabetical order. So your final answer here ends up being negative 8xy. And then your final example here I've got on number 3, I want to show you can multiply or divide different amounts or different values. And so you've got, this time you've got 3 numbers, but again you can go ahead and multiply all 3 of them together. So you've got 7 times 8, which is 56, and then you do times 2, which is 112. Okay, and then you look at your variables, and in this case I've got r cubed times r cubed times r squared. When I add all that up, it's going to be r to the 8th. And so I didn't mean that to write in a different color, but you get the idea. The final answer you're going to have is 112 times r to the 8th. And that's a basic introduction to multiplying expressions together. Take it a step at a time and make sure you're very careful when you're adding your exponents.